There we are. What's going on, y'all? We're sort of here. We're sort of here. And I gotta do the final touches of the preparations. Gotta click post. Means I gotta get this out of the fucking way. Where is it? Where? Posted, published, post. That's what the gig's all about, right? Just publishing content that we never did before in our lives. What's going on, y'all? Welcome to Grinding Gainz, the Thursday morning show here, if you will. I'm John, as always. This is RFO John, because when we created the channel, we didn't really understand what the fuck we were doing. In any case, welcome, like I said, to our Thursday edition of whatever it is that we do here. Thursday mornings, it's all about form reviews, going over technique that is updated or put into our subreddit. So I know there's various groups out there that do form reviews and form checks. They just don't like me doing form reviews of them. So I made my own little subreddit here. If you would like your own done, pop in. We'll do it. We'll make it happen. Let's see. Any points of business? Points of business? Point of order. Point of order. I don't think so. Got the dogs in here this morning. I think they switched places. So today we got Mr. Blondie near side, Mr. Sparky hanging out with us. You missed it earlier, about 5 minutes before we turned everything on. They were going at it. They're having quite the time. Quite the time. All right. So let's see here. We're gonna get through a couple of my lists this morning. I gotta make it a short stream today. Gotta get out about 7 o'clock or so. Got a client this morning. I know, pesky clients. Is that what we? Nothing. Well, I guess that would work. We just gotta hide that one. It's been a while. We gotta figure out when to bring back the Wheel of Agony. If nothing else, get to play video games, right? Make content, make video games. That's what it's all about. That's why we do this. Up a little bit. Nah, it looks a little cloudy. Maybe it's just my greasy head. All right. No, look at this guy. So unprepared. That's that one. We don't want that one. We could use that one. Oh, wait, we have the dog. Drag this up. Reorientate. Go bam. Bam. There we go. Okay. One of the biggest contributing factors, I would say, into why we created this channel, why I'm dealing with this channel and all that, was my own having to deal with hip pain. All right, so depending on what kind of pains you may have dealt with, my life, I've had a broken bone, I've had, some sort of stomach crap that felt terrible. But probably one of the worst pains I've had was when my hip was going crazy, if you will. At the time, I thought I was doing everything right. Like I was exercising. I probably wasn't eating well, but I was trying, right? You know, I was eating Salada versus, Wingstop. I was trying to make the right choices. But next thing you know, I felt a just sharp stabbing pain in my left hip. So I had to stop going to the gym. I had to stop working out. I noticed myself limping weird, making awkward movements, kind of slinging my leg. I still had to work, right? So I went to work, did what I could, but the pain just kept getting more and more. When I say more and more, I guess it was more that it became more persistent. It became more all the time. It became harder for me to lift my leg or do anything. I would stretch it, but all that would happen really was it would temporary. Like when I say temporary, I mean close your eyes and then open your eyes. And to say that was sleeping, right, is to say I was getting relief when I stretched my hip. Right. So I felt the relief when I put it in a stretch position, but as soon as I got out of the stretch, or damn near as soon as I got out of the stretch, the pain would come back, if not more intense. Shit didn't make sense to me. So finally, I seeked professional help. Got my buddy to help me out, coincidentally or fortunately, he was my friend, and he also happened to be a doctor of chiropractic care, or doctor of chiropractic. Fancy ass words. But he helped me understand more so that it was not something so much external, but more of an internal thing, if you will. And that I wasn't engaging my core properly. I wasn't using my glutes properly. And thus, I was very overextended through my hip and putting my hip joint into a position of basically a point of no return. Right. In that I feel I was very fortunate in not tearing anything or having any structural damage to my hip, as it were. But that catapulted me. That was the launching point for me into being a trainer and to what I do now. Because I learned, one, just because you played football or ran track don't mean you know shit about how to exercise. I didn't do collegiate sports, but I imagine, maybe it's better, maybe it's worse, right? Like it's like with anything. Maybe there's some good coaches out there to teach you movement. But at the end of the day, if you're there to play football, you're there to play football, not how to squat pristinely. And so I get that. Like last week's stream, Paul and I were reviewing the ankle injury during the NBA finals, right? I get that. That's what you're there for, to play. Pinnacle of your career. Damn right you're going to be out there with some calf pain. Unfortunate that happened. In any event, you got pain that is non-pathological. That means like not cancer, not infection, which means you've gotten tests done, seen the doctors, right? And they're telling you it's some sort of maybe tendinopathy or something like that. Holler at us if you're not able to get to PT or don't have access to a good physical therapist, because it's likely a muscle imbalance. We're not doctors. We are fitness nerds, but we focus on how the connections of 2 points of the body are connected, and those are muscles and tendons. So understanding those relationships, understanding how the relationship of a joint works, we're here to share that knowledge, help people understand how to move their bodies. A lot of ways I think of ourselves as mechanics. We see this mechanical and physical problem with the human body, in that, right, if we have habituated certain postures, if we've habituated certain movement patterns, this will present differently with people. So that's why you'll see collapsed chest. And then people run this way. And then when they sit down this way. And when they go to drink their coffee, they drink their coffee this way. All right. And it takes a lot for them to be able to open their shoulders up. And likely when they do open their shoulders, everything else moves around it. And these are compensation patterns. So the whole idea for, I think of it as this: we have a silhouette of the ideal posture for your body. You know, femur lengths, or maybe you've had a broken bone, and so one limb grew longer than the other. Whatever it is that is unique to you, there is this ideal posture where our skeleton, our shoulders, our head is sitting over our shoulders are sitting over our hips, our ribs aren't flared, our knees are slightly bent to where, you know, our center of mass is over the middle of our foot, so to speak, but this stacking of joints, if you will, both from how we look on the front, from the side, and rotationally. And so we take the ideal and then we're going to lay over where we are. And it's about identifying. I always think of those, what is it? The spot the differences, right? All right, with these little things. All right, yeah, look at the two different pictures and see which ones are different. That's how I feel, at least that's how I go about it. I think Paul does in some ways when he's helping people as well. It's this: where should the body be resting naturally? Where should the body travel during movement? And where does it? And then we make the difference up, right? And so that means relaxing or lengthening what is in a shortened position, and then subsequently training it in a lengthened position, followed by working its antagonist. Finally, we can train it in a compound or a complex movement, if you will. And if we take those steps, then we'll really get into good places with our bodies as far as recovery, as far as proper joint mechanics. The idea of it being is, if my pec minor, I'm going to bunch up my shirt here, if my pec minor is overactive and it's pulling my shoulder into this forward tilt position. And so, you know, let's do quick anatomy with everybody here before we get too far. All right. That image right there. We'll even do this. Need you over here, buddy. All right, so if we're just going to talk about like this pec minor for a moment. Pectoralis minor. Connects to the top of our shoulder blade, and it's going to pull our shoulder forward and to the front of the ribs. All right. And so if I'm just using my t-shirt to mimic this, I'm pulling my shirt forward, and I don't loosen it. Like I'm pulling my shirt. All right. You can see how even this starts pulling me forward. And so this is happening inside our body, under our skin. As I'm pulling this forward. Now, when I go to create any movement, this is always present. All right. So maybe I lift to the side and it doesn't really affect me. But if I try to maybe reach farther behind me, that just pulls me further in. So not too much of an issue. But as I try to lift up, now I can feel my shirt pressing against my arm. And the harder I lift, the more I feel my shirt and the shirt trying to slip out of my hand as I try to lift. That's going to be pain. Shirt all. cleaned up, straightened up. So why does that matter? Because this is being pulled down at all times, any movement we make is going to be altered by that position. And if we are unable to put our shoulder into the correct position, so to speak, or at least a more neutral position, our movement will always be affected. So no matter what we do, this is riding shotgun when it should just be in the back seat going along for the ride. So that's why it matters. It's great to work your rotator cuff. It's great to work all of these things. But if this is, again, pulling your shoulder so far forward that your shoulder head is staying tilted forward, you can do all the rotator cuff exercises in the world, and you're never really going to get your shoulder to sit back right. You'll always be flirting and dealing with that pain off and on. Even if you find those things help you, it's not to say they're not the right exercise, just a order of operations issue. Getting the chest or pec muscles to relax out, so to speak, to not be as hyperactive, if you will, such that that shoulder sits back, then doing your rotator cuff exercises will present, one, a greater challenge, and two, will present with more relief for you. Then you can do something then when you go to something like your chest press, keeping the shoulders down and back, then pressing, again, will present a different challenge, but it'll also be a more global challenge. And you'll notice, again, pain that you may occur, that you get with that, is no longer an issue. But that takes time depending on where you are within your shit. Alrighty. Let's get to it, huh? Enough of this yakety yak. Came for the videos. All right. So, like I said, if you're new here to the channel or hanging out for the first time, thanks for being here. Appreciate y'all showing up. Thursday morning is all about form reviews. So if you got an exercise that you're not sure about, you got an exercise that you want help with, or maybe you've got pain during movement, slide into our subreddit here and upload to the subreddit, and we'll hit it up on Thursday mornings. If you upload this morning, hit me up in chat, let me know, and we'll make a beeline for it, make a special call. But otherwise, let's get to it, John. You got less than an hour. I've been yakety yakking in here and you're late. Okay. So the first one I uploaded is a back squat. So full disclosure, I've been dicking with my right shoulder more so than anything while I've been during my lifts these last couple of weeks. I've been noticing a winging of my right scapula, specifically during deadlifts. Now, before I was noticing on my deadlifts, I was noticing and having some overhead pressing struggles, if you will, in that I just didn't feel my right shoulder was operating in the same manner, or there's a different awareness into how my right shoulder was feeling versus my left shoulder. And so all that, and same thing on chest press. In chest press, when I'm doing chest press, I'm noticing, again, a different sense of grip in my right hand. And as well as shoulder stability. And so all of this to me is, I'm flirting and playing around with these different theories, but first, just got to keep it simple. I think what I'm really dealing with is, again, I brought up pec minor probably because it's back in my mind, but having that issue on my right side is just a little bit of an overactive right pec minor, which is keeping this shoulder kind of forward tilted, if you will, and my scapula likes to pop off my shoulder blade. Where this presents a problem for me in my back squat is when I feel the instability, when the shoulder gets out of position, I can feel the entire weight of the bar in the palm of my right hand, which isn't fun. I will also notice just a different intensity and acuteness of load in my right shoulder. When everything's tight and in the right place, the bar feels as a nice broad load on my shoulders. Is it heavy? Yeah, but it's not this. It's like, again, you may have a balanced scale, and then all of a sudden you just heavy-handed on one side of the scale, and the thing goes tipping. That's kind of how it feels. I don't feel like I'm going to tilt, but I just all of a sudden feel all the load shift to one side of my body, so to speak. And that's not even right. It's more of an intensity. Like, all of the intensity becomes almost one spot. In any case, it's enough of a preamble. So here, yeah, my kind of ritual for getting in and under the bar is I find my hands and trying to find I use my thumbs against the knurlings, how I'm doing my spacing right now. But you want to get my wrist just a smidge wider than my elbows. And while I'm standing outside of the bar on your chopper, I'm pulling my shoulders down, and I'm kind of thinking, lowering myself just enough to get my head below, and then I'm trying to almost do like a pull up in my mind is like what I'm going after here. And pulling myself up into that bar and trying to find this nice little shell. I got two cameras here, so I'm getting distracted. But I'm trying to find this nice little shelf on my back, where as I'm squeezing my back, pressing my shoulders, pressing my chest forward, that the bar will sit on. Not going to let it sit on my neck or anything like that. And once I'm getting there, I'm also going to, again, position my feet. So here we get the bar, positioning my feet. Silly idea or thought. One of the things I've noticed before on some squat racks for myself, here do we have, is my eyes are like right here, if you will. So if we look at this bar here, we can see my eyes are past this bar. And if we follow this bar down, right, there's another little cross beam we can see based off the shadow going across here as well. So in some cases that's not there, but depending on what kind of individual you are, I bounce between both of these kinds of things, these tendencies, right? I have the desire almost to put my toes up to this bar sometimes. Why? I don't know. Lines. I like lines. So there's that, right? So the sense of this arbitrary bar or line trying to get my toes up to it for some reason. So not necessary. Sometimes that bar is not there, and you may end up stepping to where, again, you're trying getting your eyes where your eyes, try and bring your feet to where your eyes are, which again, that's why I brought up how far my eyes are relative to this support structure. All that to be said, really, we want is getting our feet under the load, bringing our feet under that center of mass, right? Because if we get too far forward and you lift up, you're going to be catapulted backwards. And if that's how you're getting out of it and you're surviving, that's great. But try this instead so you're not such at a disadvantage, as it were. This is, again, just get under the load, press straight up with the hips. So if our feet are under the bar, when we drive with the hips, we're using all the big muscles that we're wanting to use anyways. And if your feet are too far back and you try to lift up, it's going to become a lot of low back issues just based on the geometries and where your foundation is. So that's that. Dirty Cat, what going on, man? Haven't seen you around in a while. I haven't been on and around in a while either. I don't do as much streaming these days. How goes your streams, brother? You still wrecking the Mechabellum? Right. So after you get your bar out of the rack, I kept missing you when you were on. Not streamed for ages. I need to start again. I spent a lot of time on the laptop lately, and setup is not so good for streaming. I feel you. Still playing a bit of Mechabellum. There you go. There you go. How's the back been? You were going through some PT last time, if I remember correctly. Doing those core exercises. Yeah, streaming. I didn't realize how like intensive, like not just like doing this shit as it is for a human, but the resources required for the computers always amazed me. I remember the first time I tried streaming on my old laptop, and I think OBS just basically gave me the middle finger and just said, "What the fuck are you asking us to do? You know this computer can't do this." So getting into the squat, big emphasis, especially for newer people, is we get happy feet or we get drifting too far back. And I've sometimes feel I get guilty of this as well. I feel like sometimes I get like a cat trying to paw its blanket or something. Yeah, I went a few times. Last time I mentioned my squat felt strange, like my right foot wants to point out now or something, and it's rolling on its side. He said to target some points with a vibrating ball around my quad. Okay. Good. Yeah, I got a client that he has that same kind of movement compensation. How does it feel if you do like a single leg hinge or a single leg lunge? Single leg lunge. All lunges are single legs, John. Yeah. Seeing how it feels when you do any effort, just emphasize. I know this is always really grody, but I think of like taking like a roofer's nail and just right through that big toe joint. Meet you over at the dog cam. I don't know how well this comes up, but on your big toe joint, if as best you can, trying to mentally envision just nailing that fucker down, and then whatever happens. And I'll note that you probably won't go as deep into whatever expression that you are used to. If you're doing it as a lunge or as a single leg effort, like a single leg hinge, balance is going to be challenging. I would use a wall or a door jamb or a squat rack or something like that. That's the thing, when you have that line of weight, wants to shift towards the small toe. So yeah, if you're doing a lunge though, keeping that foot flat too, not to get preachy with you. I just wanted to hang out, damn it, not be chastised. All right, let's tear up my squat. Let's see what I do wrong. So again, taking it back, 1, 2. All right, so once we get under the bar, press up. And then we're going to just take 1 step, 2 steps. Yeah, a little happy feet, but that's some fine tuning. So kind of what you're talking about, Dirty Cat, when I'm looking at for here, I mean, it's the same thing. Trying to get my inseams roughly square. Making sure I have that tripod foot feel. So that way, that's our foundation. That's my foundation. And from there, we create the movement. Like lunges, I need to do more lunges, but lunges always fine, especially with new clients. It's hard for them. Oh, look at that. Wall of text, but the fucking auto moderator thing worked. Okay. Anyways, keeping the heel flat is always really hard for people, especially new clients. Balance feels all wonky. Part of it is just that they haven't worked that position. 2, they don't go slow enough to be able to work that position. And then they also, again, will have something kind of like you're saying, is maybe their foot rolls out one way as well. So just being mindful of those. And just like if you're building a house, like, are you going to build a house with like I know this is, I'm not trying to get religious-y or not, but like there's this parable in the Bible about building a house on sand or building a house on the Reddit link doesn't work. Son of a biscuit eater. Thank you for the update. Oh, I see. It's connected. The blue. Uh-oh. Yeah, I see what happened. How do I do that? We go to stream elements. Chatbot. Look at all these chat commands that I don't ever use. Socials. Is it that one? Is it that? Let's see. I don't know if this is the right way to do this, but it's going to be a way to do it. All right. Let's see. It's probably one of those things I should just write down and come back later to, but well, I didn't seem to do shit, huh? One last set, and then we're going to move on, man. Spotify. Ugh. Save that one. One last test. Socials. Hey. That one doesn't have Reddit in it, though. God damn it. Uh-oh. Well. See how often I use this thing, huh? What is it that I'm looking for? I'll also do some rotator cuff because my right shoulder hurts when I do bench press at the bottom of the movement. That is a very common one. So what kind of rotator cuff stuff are you doing? Distract me as I distract myself. Join. And the other thing I would wonder is, do you do more like what I refer to as the guillotine style? Oh, look at that. Look at that. What's a little external rotations. Yep. All right, well, we're going to have to just come back to stream elements because that's just too goddamn distracting right now. All right, so because you brought it up, I think I did chest press. We got some chest press in here. That's not chest press. I need to put up some more chest press. Chest press is so hard to videotape for me at the gym because I don't use a tripod. Is this some chest press? Overhead. This, there we go, some chest press here. So big thing I would encourage you is try floor presses. And I don't know if I do it in this set. But floor presses are great because it's going to help you feel your shoulders sitting flat on the ground. And then you only press so far as you can maintain those suckers down there. So for you, if I was working with you, first off, I'd make sure you're not doing a guillotine press. So this is a very and I'm kind of exaggerating for effect, but a lot of times people's elbows float up into their kind of neck path. And I call it a guillotine, in that if you're using a barbell, right, the bar path is over your throat now. I always think of chest presses. You want about, everything's variable, and keep in mind, but for like learning purposes, something about 45 degrees or so at your armpit. All right, and so not 90, elbows again about 45. And then the game becomes as we're pressing, keeping the forearms parallel as you press. So there is a taper, right? So we're starting down maybe at your sternum, and then as you finish, they will be up at your shoulders. And then the caveats are, again, shoulders staying flat, and then the funny bone staying rotated in as you press and as it comes back down. And those couple of cues really emphasize that external rotation of the shoulder, helping keep the chest broad. Yeah, elbows are tucked in. I really focus on that lately just to make sure. Excellent. I'm wondering if it's got hurt from playing tennis on my serve. Uh-oh. Yeah, and so, elbow pain can come from many, many different issues too, right? Sometimes it could even be something to do with your wrist and the muscles of the forearm. So based on, again, talking about chest press and having elbow pain makes me think of shoulders, but it very much could be something going on with the wrist as well for yourself, depending on where it is in that elbow. You may not be available Tuesday nights. If you're able to swing by Tuesday nights, Paul would love to work with you, I bet. That's interesting lately, because I've had an issue with my wrist bending back on my right side. So like into push-up positions. What is it? Today's meme card. No, we don't want to boost it. Where is it? But this is truly how I feel about that, right? Like, everything is connected, is what my buddy used to tell me. And so I know that makes everything feel kind of conspiracy theory-ish. But again, if there is nothing going on as far as cancer or infection or some underlying pathology, some underlying cause, right? It's a muscle imbalance, in my opinion. Not speaking for Paul here, but I think it's a muscle imbalance. So I think it may have been to do with my starting point, that my elbows was too tucked into my right side, and it was causing to start my wrist to bend back slightly because my left side is fine. Very well could be. Yeah, very well. You can get too tight, and then that wrist is breaking in the other one. And so, what was, I don't know if this is unique. I doubt it's uniquely American game, but I grew up with this game called Jenga. I'm sure it's got another name somewhere else. I find with all these commercial games, but it's this game with 3 little wooden blocks. They're just alternated all the way up. And at the beginning of the game, everything's all nice and clean, 90 degrees everywhere. Everything's squared up to each other. And then the whole point of the game is you take one piece out and you start stacking them, and eventually the thing falls. But the reason why it falls is inevitably we're unable to keep everything nice and square anymore. Not everything's able to stay over its center of mass. And then it starts moving, and then you kind of have to even potentially start laying pieces in a funky way to help try to off balance some of this stuff in a way. Our bodies are in a lot of ways the same way, right? And so if our shoulder is sitting too far forward, let's say, just argument's sake, and then we're trying to press and we're trying to keep that elbow in. Well, now that wrist may have to bend more to be able to accommodate that. Whereas if we're able to sit the shoulder further back, that gives us maybe more slack to be able to get that wrist into that position in a more natural or easier position. And so it, again, becomes a little bit of, finding what's causing the greatest amount of discomfort and pain and finding that root cause, and then just keep working your way out, keep trying to, line everything back up as you go. But if you're saying elbow and you're thinking it's wrist, is it more inside elbow, outside elbow, elbow tip? Get back up to the squat for the day. Actually, we said. And the other thing is, this right here actually may not be too bad for you to do as well. It may benefit, depending on, again, how your shoulder sits. I'm working in this video more into my armpit. But you could do a similar thing, just working the front of the chest. I started the stream talking about pec minor. That's also a common culprit for people who have wrist pain. Results as not being able to press and stabilize the shoulder well. That creates instability throughout the system and even will, again, result in wrist pain when we try to do push-ups or high planks. That'd be another good potential test for you. If you do any of those kind of self-palpations, and even this routine, actually, I guess wouldn't be a bad one. All right, and so as I'm laying here, I'm working on small rotations. Right here, you could even do lifts of the whole arm, potentially. I'm doing this because I don't have a band this day to work with, but just trying to work my shoulder in a very long position, trying to train these anterior muscles in a lengthened position, in a sense, fatiguing them out. And then after that, I actually flip over and then I'm trying to work the antagonist. I'm trying to work the other side of the joint and trying to, again, pull that shoulder into that position, as it were. Again, this was an attempt to work on keeping my shoulders seated better during my deadlifts. All right. So in this squat, once we got our feet set, we're going always cue to work your inhale down. I know there is school of thought of just holding your breath as you descend. I am more of the opinion of brace your core, work on inhaling as you descend, hit the bottom, exhale, pressing up. I think, for one, for just making sure I got oxygen for the whole thing. Two, I want to be just in a constant breathing pattern. I don't ever want to really hold my breath if I can help it, especially for more than 2 to 3 seconds at the bottom here. Now, while I'm squatting, or while while I'm watching my squat, a couple of things that I'm landmarking is, again, in this bar path. While it's not the end all be all, kind of see it's a little wibbly wobbly. We just want to kind of see, how's it traveling. Are we seeing it getting big sways out of over center? And over center, I'm referring to is the middle of my foot. Now, again, we can't quite see what's going on with my shoulders. I feel like I twisted there, huh? Well, that's interesting. Really would like to see it from another angle now. Okay. Well, that wasn't what I was going to talk about. So in any case, again, my big emphasis is, again, trying to keep mentally focused on keeping this shoulder as set as possible. And And this is mentally just tough for me because of, again, this overactive pec minor on my right side. Now in a squat, again, we're talking about bar path. So again, depth, while it's always great to get as deep as we can, the ultimate goal is maintaining your form, maintaining your spine's neutral alignment, not letting go of your core just to get to depth. So in any event, I'm going to go with green. So again, we're always, again, aim for our middle of the foot. Whoop. Will it make it align? There we go. To be, roughly in line with that bar. And the more we can maintain that as we're going, the better off we're going to be. Now, I know for myself is I have a little bit of propensity to be too far back. And thus, this can shift a little bit of where this load sits. And so redo. So I actually am always having to make sure that I'm pushing a little bit of weight into my toes, still keeping my heels down. Right? Keeping the heels down is still paramount. But again, I'm always having to flirt with that. So even though there's maybe a bit of an angle here, that's in my mind what's making up for this little bit of a difference as well. Now within here, let's call it easy way out, if you will, or a common compensation, right, as we shoot forward. In which case the hips rise up quickly, and then we'll pull our hips underneath us. And this is, again, what I'll refer to as like a good morning squat or a stripper squat. We ideally, though, the proper stand or way up is to, again, think of yourself in a cylinder, right? And this is terrible drawing, John. You fucked up. There we go. Think of yourself as like you're in a cylinder. And on your way up, you don't want to touch the walls of the cylinder. You don't want to get closer to the walls of the cylinder or anything, right? And so everything just goes straight from our feet here. And as we're pressing, we want to press as ideally straight up into that weight. All right. When I'm thinking of sprinting and running, I'm always taken back to I guess it was my sophomore physics class. No, it had to be my junior physics class. It was AP Physics. And for whatever reason, this has just always stood out to me. It's one of those like, whoa, that's just fucking interesting. We were doing free body diagrams and we were learning about doing force diagrams, learning about how gravity affects falling objects. And one of the most interesting things I take away from it, and I still tell clients to this day about, is as if something is traveling outward, the only real negative energy on it is the force of gravity pulling it down to the ground. Right? So in theory, you could shoot something, and it's what orbit is, right? Right? It just stays in orbit and just has that momentum and just keeps carrying it. But that's still applies here, right? That applies to sprinting, I say mostly, right? In that you're trying to drive outward as fast as you can, and you just happen to have to get your foot down in time so that way you don't fall and eat shit, right? But the more horizontal force you can create, the faster you will be. Well, that same principle is here, right? The more that we can push straight up into the weight with our legs, with our body, versus shifting it forward or falling back too much into it, which I don't think many people would. I think it's more against the knees snapping back. 3 3-year-old is watching and started doing squats. Okay. Look at that. I'm a fitness influencer now. Yay. Dirty cat over there starting them young. I know a lot of people always complain like babies aren't really a good representation of a good squat. But you know, if you're looking for a good like, it's not terrible. I know like their heads are heavier than the rest of their bodies and the body grows into proportions. But it is an interesting little thought experiment of how humans move and operate before being years and years of chair indoctrinations. So the more we can create that force through the foot to drive our hips back underneath us, to drive the knees back under the hips, all of that is what's going to, again, yield a good squat for us. It's not going to put ourselves out of positions. And again, our depth will always be dictated by how well we're keeping this neutral spine. And so how my spine is organized here should be the exact way it is organized at the top. All right. And so if we finish our squat, we can see me, we'll kind of highlight some things that I don't particularly like here besides the agony I had to go through. So ideally, again, from here to here, right, how all my vertebra, my pelvis, all of this stuff is going to be the same as it was at that bottom previous position. Now, one of the things, I guess it's not too terrible here, but again, I'm always trying to make sure, I'm always checking in from time to time if I'm pulling my head back, especially as I fatigue and I get tired. I can even feel like my shoulders starting to tilt forward a little bit here too. But as we fatigue out, as mentally we get tired, as physically we get tired, that's why we train. That's why we work out, to push that boundary. And then once we realize we're on that threshold, having the wherewithal to pull back out and reset for another day. Now, when I'm watching squats for others and for myself, this is a key point, right? As we get down to the bottom, people ask, is it a good squat? And so the landmarks I look to try to discern this, and we already harped on it really hard previously, right? I didn't want the arrow. We just want a line, right? But the sense of, again, our spine from our shoulders to our hips being parallel, being aligned. And then, and as best we can, from our knee, our femur, also trying to be in line. So again, from here, to me, it looks like we could probably, based on this angle, I could probably work on trying to get my knees maybe a little more over my toe. But realistically, too, I feel is, again, this sense of potentially trying to making sure I keep my chest lifted up nice and tall as well. Now, this all, again, comes with, again, trying to keep this bar, the center mass of the bar, over the middle of my foot. And so this is where the human anatomy equations always come into play. So is it a good squat? Can we keep our spine in a neutral alignment? And can we keep our shins and our spine moving in parallel? Right. These are good landmarks, I feel, for most people to use to gauge their squat and another's squat. Right. And so how do we know if my spine is not staying organized? Again, it's anywhere here in that low back, the butt wink, the infamous butt wink, right? Does that area change? Right? Now, a lot of times, again, in the upper body, we won't see too much happening, but, you know, are the ribs flaring? Right? Are the ribs expanding too much, or are they staying flat? You know, those are other ways that we could be compensating through the spine. It could be that you're feeling maybe you don't feel acuteness at the low back, but maybe you're feeling an acuteness more at that mid back. That's not what I wanted. All right, and somewhere kind of underneath the bra line, but at the back side, so to speak, where the bra strap might be, where your thoracic and your lumbar meet more specifically. And that comes from maybe a lack of control from your upper abdominals and hyperextending through there. All right, so those are other ways that we may be sacrificing or compensating to achieve a position. So whether your hips are below your knees, whether you've gotten 90 degrees or 45 degrees, whatever it is, I gauge a squat's goodness. Again, keep that spine in good alignment, and our knees or our ankle or shins staying roughly parallel with that. If it's a back squat, is that bar staying roughly over the middle foot? And then on the way up, right? Does it stay the same? Or again, do we start seeing kind of blowouts, if you will? I you know, that's the thing about it, right? Like, what is a good exercise? You know, I think we all intuitively know it. Maybe there's some caveats here and there. And again, if you're having pain, by all means, ask it. But if you record yourself, I don't know if y'all know Winter. I know he's a big deal on Twitch, right? But Winter Gaming does StarCraft, and I love how he talks about people getting better in StarCraft. And it's basically all just look. You just watch your replays. It's free, right? You just go watch your replays. I get recording yourself in a gym. It takes a little bit of egotism maybe to do it, or getting over some self doubts, if you will. I can't think of the right word. It doesn't matter. You understand what I'm saying. I hope. But one of the best things one can do for themselves is videotape themselves, to see themselves moving, because then they will finally be able to see how they're moving in space. We know how we think we're moving in space. Like, our brains will tell us how we're moving, but very often we're lying to ourselves. And so the camera, as they say, never lies. All right, here. This is a very far shot. I didn't realize how far away this was. All right, so I'm doing some bicep curls here. Now, bicep curls, again, big thing I see wrong or doing poorly is, right, we're swinging the arms, or we're bringing our body to the weight. So make it all about elbow flexion, elbow extension. We want to make it about the bicep action. If we're not able to do all that, then probably need to lighten the load. Now, as I pick up the weights here, I am, yes, I'm a little bit of overly fitness nerd about this. I still take this as a moment to practice a good hip hinge. I take this as a moment to practice as good of a squat as I can. And to me, it's one more rep. It's one more attempt to make sure I'm using good technique. I'm in this place called the gym that is to do exercise and to work on these things. So anytime I pick something up off the ground, I take that moment to do it with the best technique I can. But I understand. I'm the fitness dude. I'm the weirdo. So take it, do with it as you will. But you'll notice me do this when I'm picking up anything for the most part. Occasionally, maybe when I pick up this band, I'm lazy and tired. But by and large, if it's got mass to it, that's how I'm going to pick it up. Now, as I'm here, I'm trying to organize those shoulders as best I can. I'm engaging my core as well. So again, pulling the shoulders back, depressing the shoulders, making sure I'm not reaching my head out, pulling into my stomach, lengthening into my abs. Right. Once I have all of those, call them linchpins or all of those settings in place, then I start the movement. Right. I want to be as stable as I can from the ground up and then create movement. That way I know all the movements, all the forces being generated from these areas. I am getting a little bit of sway, so I'm needing to minimize that. But I tell you, my shoulders, holding my shoulders back is exhausting here. Right? This is working in of itself. Yes, my biceps are working. But keeping my shoulders in this stable position, it takes a lot. And I challenge you to try it yourself that way. Quick camera angle change. And so I'm supersetting here, going biceps and then triceps. Kind of a classic superset. Here I'm using brain crushers as my way of getting after it. Now, one of the little things I've been practicing and working with, especially on any of these floor exercises, is once I get the weight in my hands and I'm kind of in place, again, I'm taking a moment to set everything. So I'm pressing and pulling my shoulders together, keeping the shoulders, feeling them flat on the floor, pulling the shoulders down away from my ears. And here I'm being a little lazy, but the other part of it too is I'm just trying to be really focused on these shoulders. So I'm leaving my feet on the ground. If you're not having shoulder issues, right, and you're wanting to just spice things up, or maybe you have a limited weights at your disposal, and so you need a little more intensity into the exercise, right? Get your shoulder sets, draw your navel in such that you feel your low back press into the ground, and then lift your knees up over your hips one at a time and feel that pressure develop on the stomach. And then from there, if you're still needing more intensity, you can extend your legs out into like a hollow body fashion and then go into your whatever exercise you're doing on the ground here. So what I'm doing and taking the moment for this setup is, again, getting my shoulders in position, but then pressing or lifting my elbows up while keeping these shoulders where they are. And so I haven't watched this yet, so I'm really interested to see how this goes. And so right here, I feel like my shoulder may have lifted up a bit. Yeah. And so now I'm going into the brain crushers kind of position, taking my time. And then here, maybe a little flare of the ribs that I can work on. Keeping everything down and collapse, so to speak, on that anterior, not overextending into my back. And then I like on brain crushers to get the elbow just past the collarbone. And then from here, it's just like the bicep curls. It's all about straightening the elbow, bending the elbow. So you want to work on keeping the elbows fixed in space. And shoulders, still trying to maintain those shoulders feeling flat on the floor, trying to keep them down away from my ears. And you can see my stomach, I'm kind of taking real quick, shallow breaths. Even working on, if you got the mental awareness of it, working on big, slow inhales, big, slow, deliberate exhales. Just kind of wanting to see what's going on with my elbows here. So I'm even playing with a little bit of this idea of pressing the weight away versus just all elbow extension. But at the end of it, it's you find your own little mental tricks or mental cues to help access these muscles for yourself. And we broke it. And then as a part of any of this stuff, I'm again trying not to allow my elbows to flare out. And then when I'm done with the weight, bringing it back out the way it went. Commonly, I see clients let this go up overhead and set it down. It's probably not the end of the world, but you're putting yourself into a very lengthened and jeopardizing position. Again, if you're controlling the weight or just kind of going with it and you have the mobility, again, probably not an issue, especially if you're on the floor. If you're on a bench or something, that's a terrible idea because, well, that's how you'll fuck up your shoulder. Again, I always practice, just bring it down towards the hips and then set it off to the side. And so that's, again, nice little superset. Now, one of the things, let's see, is again, this left elbow of mine, working on, again, trying to keep this sucker rotated in. And this all stems back to, like we were talking earlier, is those externally rotated shoulder, this pec minor being overly a little hyper-shortened, just being a little bit of abbreviated state or chronically abbreviated state. And what it means by that is I've developed a strength pattern, if you will, that requires that pec minor when I'm using this shoulder in a lot of cases. And so taking the time to reset and retrain everything is the game. So that way, again, all this is going to get back to helping me keep that right scapula sitting flat. All right. Let's move on to some deadlifting because for some reason people like deadlifts. So again, you can see as I set up here, this damn scapula thing I've been talking about the whole time. And while it might be minor for some, it irritates the fuck out of me. No, it's a couple of fold. One, it's just I feel it's important to make sure that it's not going to get worse on me, so I don't want to let it antagonize. But in that thing right there, right? And so while it's not creating me pain right now, I've noticed this. I've seen this observation in my lifts. If you've been here with the whole stream this morning, right, I've kind of shared with you all of the observations that I've been having throughout my lifts, right? When I'm doing any type of chest press work, my right hand grip just doesn't feel the same. When I'm doing any type of squat work, right, I can feel that it's really difficult for me to keep this shoulder sitting back. And then when I get fatigued, all of a sudden I can feel my shoulder maybe kind of pop forward and all the load then transfers into my palm. Right? Overhead pressing, when I'm have overpressed, I can feel just a difference in recruitment patterns and just availability. So that, again, there's something definitely not right with my right shoulder. There's something not good or proper going on with my right side shoulder. And so being aware of it, trying to do things about it within my lift sessions, right? You can only do so much, right? So it's just trying to practice good techniques. And then as we saw in one of the videos, I do a little bit of a corrective before the lift. I think I got another video coming up. We'll see similar actions. So again, just taking the time and not ignoring it for the sake of it, right? Because at the end of it, this is just going to precipitate further and further. This imbalance just gets worse if we don't acknowledge it, if nothing else. That a nice long soapbox rant there, y'all. So again, really trying to focus on keeping these shoulders depressed. Now, when it comes to a deadlift, a full conventional deadlift, as I was saying in another video, it starts here at the bottom. We're picking it up from the ground to lift it up. So while I'm down here, I want to make sure that everything is rigid in my upper back. The term is taking the slack out. Once we got the slack out of the bar, we begin by pressing through the feet to create the lift. And then, as always, I cannot overemphasize it. You want to set it down the way you came back up. I'm only doing 4 here because technically this part of the cycle for me is supposed to be about max lifts. So leg wise, I feel pretty good, but it's really about my right shoulder that's giving me these issues. So that's a little bit what's holding me back right now. But my limiting factor. And I am choosing that to be my limiting factor. But overall, I know that I ain't got no lifting goals, man. I just want to be able to move my shit. Like I said, I want to be able to wipe my ass when I'm 90 or the day I die. I want to be able to still be able to wipe my ass. So lifting 315 does not help me with that. Be able to lift with good shoulder mechanics, being able to lift with good hip and ankle mobility, all of that goes to my goal of being able to wipe my ass until the day I die. Now it's into this, right? Not that it really does anything other than highlights the fact that I guess how my brain works. So as I'm lifting here, right? Now again, I understand there can be all kinds of different factors. Right? Maybe part of it could be the angle, right? There seems to be a bit of an angle to the camera. But to me, it still seems that there's an excessive difference between those two sides. All right. And it goes to stand to reason that there would be based on, again, kind of what I'm feeling. And then even so, how my shirt is bunching up here versus how my shirt's bunching up over here. All right. Again, this is middle. Oh. Interesting. Ah. I wonder. Almost looks like I got a twist in me, huh? Interesting. Again, I wonder how much of this is the camera angle, but it almost looks like I got a little bit of a curvature going on, huh? Well then. I wonder how much of that is the angle. Now my mind's all rabbit holing. All right, so taking it back into a squat here for a moment. So on this one, I think this was last Thursday. Like working with this sense of pec minor. Now, one thing I do know, or again, I have to remind myself, is I did break my ribs about 3 or 4 years ago. And so I can feel a difference when I am pulling that rib down, where it naturally just kind of sit up and out. And so that's something I'm going to have to start working on more acutely and seeing how that plays in with everything as well, because that's going to be a big factor. Now, what I'm doing here on this set is first, I was just trying to, again, open up the shoulder. I'm using this rack as a way to kind of pry myself and lengthen a bit into the chest. And then I'm activating into the arm as well. And then I'm just kind of sensing my body, trying to keep everything square, trying not to let anything get out of kilter just for the fact of, or just for the sake of trying to get that thing done. And then here again, working on some external rotation. And in here you see me holding my ribs. And that's again me trying to feel where that broken rib is, or formerly broken rib. And then immediately as fast as I can safely and still keeping all my little rituals. This camera angle is so weird. Look like a little Oompa Loompa or something. My arms look so long. All right. So again, the camera angle's a little funky. That's not what we wanted. Go away. But again, looking, got a little bit of a fish eye lens going on. Or fish eye lens, fish lens eye. Anyways. Let's see what we see here. So again, with a complete, understanding that they're either the camera may be not exactly square, and we got some rounding to the edges. And trying to just get a sense of how that is. All right, even as I'm trying to get my hands square. All right, we see a little bit. We see the end of the knurling here. We don't see the end of the knurling here. So maybe I'm not as square on the bar as I thought I was. Do we see? If we redo this. Oh, we don't care about that right now. All right, so we look here. We look there. Well, it does look like this hand may be a little wider. It also makes me wonder almost, maybe my phone case sucks too, so maybe it's uneven. All right, but how even are we here versus here? I didn't mean to do that. There we go. All right. Man, looking at it like this, man, it looks pretty fucking terrible, huh? But so again, for me, I feel is the big thing I'm trying to do is, and maybe I am overcompensating, right? Maybe I'm over pulling down on this shoulder and I'm collapsing somewhat on this right side. Could also have been why that other deadlift looked like a little funky to me. But realistically, what I'm trying to do is pull this shoulder back. So that way I'm nice and broad across the chest on both sides. And as a part of this, tilting the elbows forward. Right? And we've looked at kind of my hands. Hand position looks decent right now. But even on these, I think about my knuckles rolling over the bar. Right? And the reverse of revving a motorcycle. Let's see how this, get the bar up out of the rack and we'll step back and see if we get a better view. Still a very wonky angle. You're trying to hips go back, knees bend forward, get to the bottom, we pause, exhale. Crazy, man. And every rep, like I'm making little adjustments here and there. Unless it feels right, and then we try to get to that same place again. I think this is the last rep, so I want to take a look at the last rep. All right, this is going to be where I'm the most tired. This is where life is going to be just the best. So let's see how things are. Mostly, again, especially here at the bottom, just looking for the differences, right? We at the bottom again, we see a little bit here, we see a little bit there. That looks decent enough. Now again, we see this space and we see the lack of space over there. All right. So that's the thing. All right. If we look at this wrist, the right wrist versus the left. All right, look how I feel like we see a lot more of my pinky here. Whereas this pinky looks like it's a little less, right? So this one, it looks like the wrist is rotating this way versus my knuckles staying this way. And so as the shoulder begins to tilt back forward, my elbow starts going back this way, right? And as that happens, it starts pulling my hand away, and I start to end up gripped here. Right? And so I can't quite remember what I was feeling during this day specifically, but I do remember having a sense of not being as connected to this, or feeling it maybe disengage. And I also remember on one of these sets, again, like I've been highlighting that sense of it in my hand, or again, just the acuteness of the weight sitting on one side more so. And just try it real quick, go down the middle. All right. And so, yeah, it just feels like as we look here, it looks to me that this shoulder is just a little more tilted forward. And this one looks like it's, again, sitting back further. And that's my imbalance that I'm working on right now. And even as we're coming in, right, I can just sense, I just feel like this is collapsing more and more and more. All right, y'all. Well, that's it for this morning. I got to get going. It's past 7. I was supposed to leave at 7. Got a client this morning online, then go and seeing one in person. Appreciate everybody stop by. Dirty Cat, thank you for stopping by and chatting and sharing with me. Hope things get better with your arm and elbow. Like I said, if you want some more help with it, feel free to stop by. And if you have your chest press, if you want to put it up online, throw it up on Reddit. We'll break it down, and I'll see what I see on next Thursday. If you want to hop in with us on Tuesday evening, Paul and I, we're trying to figure out our strides on that one still. But Tuesday night, we do a stream, 5:30 p.m. Central till about 8 p.m. or so, whenever we run out of steam. As always, I appreciate it again. Thank everybody for stopping by. Dirty Cat, especially for, again, like I said, chatting it up. As always, stay mindful as fuck, y'all. Don't compensate. Have a great day.